Hey, it's Anthony and Tucker with Land Title. We came to bring you your lender update for the month, and we've got a lot to talk about because we have a full year's worth of information, and everyone wants us to rub the crystal ball, which I don't think anybody knows what's going on.
No one knows, but we'll know more in 5 days or about by the end of the month with policy. We'll know what's going on. So let's first just recap year over year what we saw in December, because I think that's a good indicator for what we might be seeing into January and what we're already kind of feeling, at least anecdotally, is actives are up. We have more inventory than before. Under contracts were down a little bit year over year, but remember last year in 2023, that was like the absolute bottom of our real estate cycle. So not too surprising there, but the good news is we had a lot of a lot of sales. We were up almost 18% in sold for last month in December, which is really rare, right?
Totally
That's
rare.
really one of the slowest months.
Yeah, you can tell we're in a transition year because we had the last 4 months, really September, October, November, and December, all were big increases in under contracts and solds. And what that really led to was kind of the start of a new year with a little bit of optimism in it up until we got to all this crazy inflationary policy. So now we're kind of in this boat where like, what's going to happen in 2025?
Yeah.
I think the one thing you can expect is that if you make decisions on what's happening today, people will make good decisions. They just can't expect interest rates to come down all year. And if they do, it'll be a really pleasant surprise.
Yeah, and that's where it's, hey, silver lining, rates come down, but let's work on what we're dealing with today because we're not seeing a lot of movement.
Yeah, and 14% increase in active units of inventory is really not very much because we had way more than that throughout the year. Boulder was up 44% if you look at it over the course of the year.
Yeah.
So lots more inventory in some of these markets. Other markets, though, not very much, right?
And that's where we can see our year-to-date change. It's one of the columns in there. It's one of those center columns. Really, I mean, you look at Boulder, Erie, and, Louisville, and even Superior, really large double-digit increases year over year for year-to-date supply. So we've had more supply. Quite a bit came off the market in the fall. That wasn't really moving necessarily, or they're going, hey, we'll relist next year. So expect more and more inventory to be on the markets, which is a great sign for you and your buyers. They can be a little more choosy, make sure they find the right home. So just remind your folks, while inventory might be slow now, it will be getting better, and this will be a really good inventory year for them to keep them engaged.
That's right. January is always the lowest amount. So December, we didn't even hit the low point here, but we will be rising every single month. So since we report on it in the rears, this is something that happened a while ago, right? So now as we add units and buyers are out to market, you're going to see more inventory pile up every month because that's what happens every year, right? And so love to see that. Now, the month supply of inventory really doesn't tell you how much inventory. It tells you what is your buyer going to feel or what your seller going to feel like in that situation. So at 2.3 months of inventory, let's just call this the low point because it very possibly could be. That amount of inventory is really going to mean that if no other homes come on the market, it's going to take 2.3 months to sell everything. So it's going to start stacking up and getting more competitive. 2.3 months being a buyer's market in some cases, most cases really, but what's going to happen is it will not be there for long. So I think this is get those buyers out, get them shopping early because listings will definitely come along and then it's going to get more balanced. I mean, at least sellers are favored for like a very short minute, but by the time they get through pre-quals and showings, we're already going to be in March.
And remember, and this does change quite a bit, submarket to submarket too. So even comparing like a Superior versus Lafayette, you'd think are almost the same, relatively close, but they're not. Superior's been trending higher, and they're finally coming back down a little bit from some of that Marshall Fire disaster. But they're sitting at 3.11, where we're looking over at Lafayette. They're moving fast right now. So if you have shoppers in certain submarkets, make sure you pay attention to how those submarkets might be moving a little faster or slower than the rest of the county here.
Absolutely. What about days on MLS?
Ooh, days on MLS. Big numbers, 63. And remember, this is the average. So this also takes the houses that took 6 months to a year to sell. So keep that in mind. But what we can really see is how fast is the market moving. And what this really means is how long does my buyer have to kind of get that second look? Do we want to do a second walkthrough? Do we have follow-up questions? How soon do we need to write? How quick do we need to make this move? And what we can really see is across the entire Boulder County market, except for Louisville, it's moving, right around 60 plus days on average.
Louisville is the only one that was lower. And just keep in mind,
constraint. Louisville's always tight on supply.
It is. And it has more than usual right now, but honestly, it's still going super quick because it's such a good place to live and such a
price
hot
point
market.
wise, there's some pretty cool stuff there.
There is some really cool stuff. Okay, so with this one, just remember that every month it's going to get faster all the way through May or June. So get them to shop early so they have the most time to do what they need to get done.
All right. Now, this is going to be the biggest Obviously what's going on is price point, price point, price point. We're going to continue to see out more competition. The lower in the price point you go, the higher in the price points you go, less competition generally. And that's really that 1.5 to 2 million. It's been a little slow during this fall. And a lot of that's due to the cost of money, but things will be changing. People will be wanting to trade up as they can get really good coin for their, starter or more entry level home. They have that ability to trade up as life circumstances happen. So that's where we really focus on those 5 Ds. When you're out prospecting and talking with your clients, the 5 Ds of death, diapers, diamonds, divorce, and debt. You got
That's
it.
the 5 Ds. You got it.
But what we can really see here is, our year-to-dates overall, we're doing better than we were last year on both our actives, so how much we had on the market available and sold. So we are up year-to-date, year-over-year in sales. We had a better year in 24 than 23. And that's what I would say is your biggest takeaway is 23 is our bottom. Towards the end of 23 is really our bottom. We're trending up for the detached market. We're really starting to trend up, and we're out of that, out of the bottom of the market. So we're moving up in the cycle.
Yeah. All right. Now, on the flip side of the coin, we've got the attached market. And the attached market, as you guys know, have been challenging over the course of the last year. It's obviously challenging to lend on. We've had all kinds of other challenges. That's not really going anywhere right now.
No.
We don't really see it changing. I think you probably got a couple of years of this if you want the only thing in my crystal ball that might actually be intact.
And you guys know about it because you deal with the master policy insurance for these large HOA complexes.
So nice.
Do they meet Fannie Freddie guidelines? So dust off your kiddie condos and your non-conformings, or excuse me, not non-conforming, non-warrantables.
Yep.
Because that's what's going to be moving. So if you have good non-warrantable product, you should be the go-to lender for all attached because it's trending that direction right now.
It really is. And I mean, in all reality, we're basically down about 10%, 15% across the board for total sales volume in the attached market. And listings have been skyrocketing, and they probably will do the same in the next year. So, maybe it makes sense for somebody to jump in if they can get a really good deal. But I do think there should be caution tape around a lot of the attached market right now.
Yeah, you don't want to go in too high on it because it may not hold that value for the short term. Long term, real estate's great.
Exactly.
But that short term, 1 to 2 years, maybe caution a little bit more around the attached product.
Month supply of inventory and days on market. Tucker, detached. Do you want to talk this month?
Absolutely. So what we kind of see here is our month supply of inventory up until we hit about 2 million. It's all pretty fast-paced movement. And a lot of that is really because of the cost of money. And while normally we would see the 1.5 to 2 higher, it's also because of the limited amount of supply right now in that market. A lot of that's going to be coming on this spring. That's the kind of stuff that gets pulled off, put back on. Those price points a little bit different than our 400, 500, 600,000 where, hey, I'll let it ride through the winter because, hey, I might find a good buyer in those circumstances. And then we look at our days on market, and it's all over the board. And that's really just because some listings have been sitting really long. So that really kind of throws off our averages. But the main thing I'd look at is look at our month supply of inventory on our high-end luxury, that 2.5, 2 million plus, 3 million plus. It's still high at 7.8 months, but that's a lot better than this time last year. We were looking around 16 months of inventory, 14 months of inventory respectively, really high. So it shows that the high-end market is still moving, not as fast as, pandemic years, but it's still moving and it's eating up some of that inventory. But we're going to be then again seeing in the spring an inventory glut kind of start hitting around March, April is when we'll really start seeing that. So if you have shoppers in that, in that high end market, never turn that off. Keep them going because they'll find some great value right now.
I don't really think luxury is a lot like the attached market in some ways where it doesn't have nearly as much seasonality, right? So just like in attached, we have a lot more inventory. A lot of it came off because people get frustrated. But in all reality, there's still 4 months of inventory in most price ranges if they're a little bit higher. The lower end stuff, the condos, even 2.5 months after a lot came off the market. But the truth is they're just not moving as fast,
and
right?
At those price points, they should be slinging off the shelves because of the cost.
Right. There's just an affordability crisis in the attached market right now. And it's just almost cheaper to just go buy a detached property, or people are so nervous about special assessments and other stuff that they just are opting out of this. And it's honestly a lot cheaper to rent a place than a condo. And that's like the first time in so long where you can be like, I just don't know if the $1,000 a month difference is worth it. And that is where people really start to struggle, right? And it's so hard when we all know what real estate does for wealth. to help them
Long term.
understand that long term. But, people really got to figure out how to get in the door. And it's taken 78 days to get some of these sold. So if you have attached buyers, they can find deals, they can go in there, they can negotiate hard. There's a lot sitting for a long time. So I think if you have that buyer, help them, get them out there. They really, truly probably won't regret it if they hold it for the long term.
Yeah, and that's always the key, holding it for the long term. And they have their own house. But yeah, like we were saying, it's a great way to go. Now, let's talk our average sold price for detached, right? This is going to be very different from our attached. So year to date, we're doing well. Pretty much we're going up. We're increasing. Overall, year over year, we're looking good. Year to date, we're looking good as well. Now, our TTM changes a little bit off, some negatives in there, and that was because 23 really hurt us and really hit us hard. We've come back from that, so we're now building our sales prices as a whole back up. We saw about 1% to 2%, but then it changes a little bit by submarket. And that's where we can really see how affordability is playing into our changes in average sales prices. Right, Anthony?
Absolutely. I think the two that you got to look at the most is the two that were affected by the Marshall fires, because the stuff that got rebuilt is getting rebuilt at a more expensive price than the existing inventory. So that's showing in Louisville and in Superior, and just how expensive that product is as it's getting sold. And it's a lot of the product getting sold. Yeah. So that one's really interesting. Lafayette at 4.5% is awesome to see, because it just favored better than the rest of the county, because it's just affordable. Yeah. And Erie did really well as well up until this last year. And there's just been so much inventory. So Erie has a lot of sales. It's been having more sales than it's ever seen because of the inventory increase, but we're basically stagnant, right? And that's okay, right? 1 year of stagnation in price is not going to hurt anyone. You get into the attached market and you just see something very, very different. You see a lot of these really struggling. They are Superior specifically, we're building cheaper than we had existing inventory, and it's creating problems. So,
because the existing inventory was a little bit larger, almost like paired homes kind of style, versus a lot of that downtown Superior, as you've driven through it. Boom, that is, 2 2s, 3 2s.
And the building got delayed by a couple of years.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of in a very different position based off of where you're at in the county. Definitely use the data with your clients if you need it there. The last thing we wanted to talk to you about was just the number of sold units. If you look at the detached market, this is so cool to see. We saw start off really strong this last year. So I think you're going to see similar behavior, because buyers get frustrated and they've been sitting on the sidelines too long. And they're like, you know what? 2025 is the year I'm going to buy a house, right? And even though it looks like, mortgage loan applications may not be at the greatest rate that they've ever been, because interest rates were just a little bit higher. As we see this year kind of go through, we really are going to see buyers be more engaged, because that group on the sideline just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We saw it last year where sellers were just getting frustrated and finally said, screw it, I'm sticking it on the market. Yeah. And a lot of them sold and a lot of them didn't. And here, this is directly correlated to buyer behavior now, because there's always inventory for a buyer in a market like this. We just don't have very many of them. So buyers were really active till they kind of ran out of steam. And then June through September, up until rates got better, we had that increase in rates, as you guys remember.
Look at October. You can just see it visually, that
boom,
jump in
right? All those under contracts from September jumped in. We had an excellent fourth quarter. The same situation could happen if rates trickle down over the course of the year, which is what we're all being told. Who knows what's going to actually happen? But at this point, you can see how rates affected the market in those middle few months, and you can see how they affected the market in the latter quarter, where we really did have a better environment for buyers, and buyers finally got motivated. So my crystal ball says somewhere around a 10% increase yearly in the detached market. The attached market, on the other hand, not as much seasonality, not as much going on.
And it's really all across the board. And I think we're, if we can remain same as last year for attached units, that's a good sign.
I think so too.
We might see, just because of overall buyers getting more attached market, more sold in the attached market, but it's not going to be driven by desire. It's going to be driven out of necessity. Yep. And I think that's the key takeaway is attached is going to be driven out of necessity, not out of desire, where in years past it might have been desire. Just because of the financials and what's going on with these HOAs and the insurance. I think that's your biggest headwind right now for your attached market.
True. And, remember, if you were in the industry back in 2010, 2011, 2012, the attached market did the same thing. It suffered faster. It recovered faster. So it's going to go through market cycles very differently than the detached market. Just kind of keep tabs on it. Understand that that's going to happen. But here we are. So if you have any other questions, you need anything else, obviously we're always here for you. We really appreciate you. Thanks for watching the video today.
Happy New Year.
Bye, everybody.